The 118th Congress begins today. Lawmakers will meet on Capitol Hill at noon Eastern, where 82 members will be sworn in for the first time. Democrats will maintain their control of the Senate, but Republicans now have a narrow majority in the House.
All right, it is still unclear who will be the next Speaker of the House. House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy has made concessions to gain support from the far right wing of his party, but several members say they will still not vote for him. McCarthy held a meeting late last night in the hopes of securing the support he needs. He can only afford to lose 4 GOP votes. To talk more about this, let's bring in CBS News political analyst and Republican strategist Leslie Sanchez and CBS News political contributor and Democratic strategist Joel Payne. Happy New Year. Good to see you both.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. So, Leslie, let me ask you first. There was some video yesterday, and you could hear our Robert Costa asking one of those no votes, Matt Gaetz, if in that meeting last night, the House Minority Leader McCarthy had said anything that would change that vote from a no to a yes, and he seemed to indicate that it was still a no. So what does that mean going forward? I mean, he hasn't been able to sway votes in holding that meeting where you would expect that he would give concession after concession, and I would like to know what those concessions are. They probably have to do with allowing the far right-wing members of his party either plumb committee assignments or more influence.
And we know, Vlad, now, because Scott told us earlier, that we have a fifth guaranteed no vote.
That's right. So what does this mean?
A lot of it, Vlad, is inside baseball, right? So these are, in many cases, freshman members or, more juvenile members who are coming in trying to wield tremendous amount of power. It is not the first time we've seen this. You saw this with the Tea Party when they came in the 90s and they were, moving through in the 2010 and when they were moving through the Congress, trying to wield more support. What's different about it? Back then, it was in the committee assignments. You saw a lot of junior members trying to wield support within committees to move legislation to the floor, a lot of times because we were in the minority. But if we weren't, we were in the majority. It was the same kind of apparatus and approach. What's different now is these are political wrecking balls without an alignment of how they would govern if they were in leadership. So if a lot of, I would say, Republican members who see the importance of this speakership for McCarthy are trying to tap down those members, that message, and they call it showboating. They call it petty. And I tend to agree with them.
So, Joel, if McCarthy sort of getting the votes that he needs, if it means that he's going to have to placate or give in to the demands of more extreme members of the party, is there a possibility, in order for that not to happen, that Democrats may maybe step in and help out a little?
And what does he barter with them to do that, to get that?
Democrats typically are all in on governing. I think what Democrats are probably not all in on is correcting or fixing the mess that Kevin McCarthy and Republicans have created for themselves. So I think Democrats are, some of the chatterings that you may have heard from Capitol Hill are of Democrats being like, look, we're interested in the best governing scenario to make sure that the issues that matter, that the things that matters to voters are elevated, but they're not going to do Kevin McCarthy any favors. Just taking a step back here, what this feels like to me is the culmination of a really tough cycle for Kevin McCarthy and for heretofore establishment Republicans who have tried to kind of balance this Trump, let's call it a Trump virus within their party, within their caucus, that has now taken over. Right. And the reason why Kevin McCarthy's strategy in the last midterms was to win as many seats as possible was to avoid this very scenario, because he knew he did not have enough votes at the margin to survive a challenge like this. I also would say that Kevin McCarthy, one of the things you have to be able to do is count as speaker. And something that, regardless of how this turns out this week, that I think we've seen is that he's going to have a hard time counting the 218. At any point during, if he should be speaker or if any of his Republican allies should be speaker this cycle of Congress. It's going to be really hard to count the 218 when you have a caucus that includes folks who don't believe in governing and who typically do not believe in your posture to be a part of a governing scenario.
And so then he probably, I'm speculating here, but he probably thought it wouldn't be this close because the narrative going into the midterms was more seats, more members of Congress elected from the Republican Party. But Leslie, I was fascinated by a tweet that I saw from Susan Page, who's appeared on our air, and I know you guys know her. She's the Washington bureau chief at USA Today. She talks about in her tweets the troubling history of the GOP when it comes to the speaker position. Paul Ryan, who retreated, some say, she says also retired. John Boehner, who's also, he was just said, I had enough, I'm out. He quit, essentially. Dennis Hastert, who ultimately went to jail. Newt Gingrich forced out. And so I wonder, as these members, you mentioned the Freedom Party, and now it's even a more extreme branch of the Republicans that are making a lot of noise there. Have the Republicans faltered in allowing oxygen for some of these people, as opposed to trying as best as they can to bring it back to the center? I get it. Trump happened, and that changed the dynamics in the GOP. But is there a way to bring it back to the middle?
What's interesting about that, yes, there's been tremendous consternation. You can go back, and I think you cited some tremendously important historical examples. I use that reference of political wrecking ball. That's what they called Newt Gingrich as a freshman member when he came in, and he didn't have the standard decorum of Congress. He was much more brutal in his attacks, in his partisan attacks. The distinct difference in how we've evolved with the GOP is those partisan attacks, very much like Trump-esque, were directed at the opposition, at the Democratic Party. Today, they are internal. And that friction is one part. And yes, it's a great talking point and something you see on air, but it does not lead to a conservative governing majority. And that's where Kevin McCarthy is. What can we do? I mean, that's great. But when it comes to governing, this is third in line to the presidency. This is someone who can build that coalition, and you will always have that friction of our voters who want to see action, but the slow movement of Congress is always going to frustrate people. I think what's important, Kevin McCarthy, and real quickly, has an agenda. They want to eliminate funding for IRS agents. They want to move on border security. There's not a disagreement today on the policy issues. There's a disagreement on how much power he's going to allow them to wield.
So then, Joel, what do you anticipate the relationship will be like between President Biden and this new House if you have, in a way, a House divided? It's a very slim majority, and Republicans are sort of fighting amongst themselves.
Well, if you notice what President Biden is doing this week, he is doing an event with Mitch McConnell in Kentucky, and he is actually doing other public-facing events with other, what you might call non-MAGA Republicans. Part of his 2023 branding is going to be his ability to work across the aisle and to be a unifier. And I think President Biden is going to look for Republicans, look for opportunities to reach across the aisle. He's also, by the way, knows that he's got members of that House Republican Congressional Caucus that would not mind being a part of getting to 218 with the support of Democrats. There's a lot of those Republicans. Yes, there are a lot of the Matt Gaetzes and the Lauren Boeberts and the people like that. There are also a lot of Republicans who are in Biden +5, +10 districts who know that they have to be seen as being willing governing partners to work with the president. And so you're going to see the president and his team target those folks. Last thing, you're also going to, I think, see the president as he gears up for 2024, run against the chaos that you're going to see at the leadership of the House Republican caucus. You're gonna see the president talk about these folks want to be in charge, and they're given an opportunity to be in the lead, and they don't want to do anything substantive for the American people. And you're going to see that as a consistent talking point and thread that the president and his team push on as we move towards 2024.
All right, Joel Payne, Leslie Sanchez, great seeing you guys. Great way to kick off the year, right? We get to see them on, what is it, the third day of the year?
Third day of the year.
Okay.
Already we're lost.
Yeah, really. Thank you so much, guys. So stay with CBS News for live coverage of the House Speaker vote this afternoon, plus a full recap of the results on Red and Blue. That starts at 5 p.m. Eastern.